What's up, guys? Episode 7. Today I'll be making the verdict predictions for the midweek card. UFC on ESPN, Kattar versus Ige. Before we go into that quickly though, I'd like to recap last weekend's event. Went 4-5 on verdict picks, getting a silver badge, finished top 40% with 3,569 XP gain. In terms of betting, we lost the prelim value pick in Dos Santos. It was a close decision to Salikov. I didn't actually get to watch the whole fight, but I saw a lot of people didn't agree with that decision. And then the Per Annum, we went 3 out of the 4 legs correct. Obviously the big leg, Aldo by points, didn't get up. The other 3 did. So we look ahead, we go to the next one. Just kind of recapping from the bottom, Reba's far too good. Paige didn't look like she really wanted to be in there. Choosing a finish was the right way to go about it, just chose the wrong one, went with the KO instead of the sub, so that's okay. Rose also looks really nice. Less grappling than I thought, and Andrade did look better defensively on the feet, but still just not good enough. Obviously landed her own shots, but Rose outpointed her there to that decision. I think Aldo Yan was the most entertaining title fight of the 3. Aldo looked really good early. Leg kicks, he looked damaging, putting Yan off his rhythm, not letting him come forward, but I was pretty disappointed to see him run out of steam in that 4th round and then just get rolled. Yan made adjustments and it was impressive as well. But yeah, in that 4th round, Aldo was slipping punches and still being defensively accountable, but then just not throwing anything of his own. So props to Yan for gathering pace there and putting Jose away. That second title fight, controversial for Volk. I did score the fight for Max. And yeah, Volkanovski didn't really do too much different to the first fight, and it was Max that made the necessary adjustments, like countering the kicks with his own, and definitely used a more balanced approach, not just steaming forward, running into Volk's power and dancing around a bit. Made for a bit of an uneventful fight, but that's all good. Happy for Volk to retain the title, being from down under myself. But yeah, and then the main event, Usman, Masvidal had his moments, fought a tough fight, but Usman honestly has a granite chin, and that grapple heavy offense is just so hard to counter or oppose, especially if you're not a grapple heavy guy like Colby and have the skills necessary to nullify Usman and just stand and bang. Yeah. And his cardio, absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Alright, so to the bottom of this week's main card, we've got Abdul Razak Alhassan versus Munir Lazzez. Abdul is 1.17 times on verdict and Lazzez 7.2 times. Alhassan's 4-1 in UFC and 4-1 in his last 5. This is Lazzez's UFC debut, and he's 4-1 in his last 5. Alhassan, crazy power, absolutely crazy power. 10 victories, 10 knockouts in the first round. He's a wild man. He throws all sorts of attacks, but he loves his hands. And yeah, he literally just comes forward and goes hell for leather. Most recent knockout over Nico Price within a minute. And yeah, he touches people, they go out. He has 1 or 2 fights that have gone past 2 or 3 minutes in the first round, apart from his decision loss. Okay. And from what I've seen in interviews, he seems really angry, really worked up. Obviously there's kind of the personal stuff going on, the rape allegations in his life. He seems really worked up, a lot of pent up emotion regarding that, and that doesn't spell good things for his opponent when he comes out even angrier than what he typically does. As for Lazzez, pretty much an unknown commodity, solid record, good wins on the regional scene against guys with positive records and experience on their records as well. From the footage I could find, he looks pretty solid. He's got good wrestling defense. He's fought a lot of wrestlers, and he's got really crisp striking of his own. And like Alhassan, he really falls in love with his hands, especially his straight punches. He's quite long, 6'1", 76-inch reach. He'll carry an advantage in this fight. Nothing that Alhassan wouldn't have seen before at welterweight, but he does use his length well with those straight attacks. And like I mentioned, he's a dangerous striker as well. He's got 9 wins, 8 of them all by knockout. So yeah, should be an absolute firefight. I think someone goes out, but the verdict odds are just far too short on a KO finish. And pretty much as I think Alhassan still has the power advantage, even though Lazzez seems very capable. And he also has kind of the greater experience in the UFC. I will be taking him, but I'm going to be taking Alhassan via a decision at 8.36 times and wagering 150 XP. The first round knockout is what I think will happen, but 1.38 times currently is far too short. I think Munir is good. yeah, fighting out of Dubai, that probably is helpful for him as well. Not too much travel and time difference advantage, so to speak. But yeah, I've pretty much got a decision because the KO is too short, but I think the KO will happen. Similar to my next fight, but kind of roles reversed. So we'll get to it. Molly McCann versus Talia Santos. Molly McCann's 1.26 times. Talia Santos coming back at 4.82 times. McCann's 3-1 in the UFC, 4-1 in her last 5, and Santos is 0-1 in the UFC, 4-1 in her last 5. Starting with McCann, you know, obviously, as everyone knows, she's a really tough girl. Absolutely busted up face, you know, second last fight, but fought through it. Decent skill set, kind of sloppy on the feet, but she's gritty and she always comes forward and she's super high volume. Her wrestling's pretty solid too, and she does shoot often. I think her, yeah, there we go, 2.59 average takedowns per 15 minutes. And yeah, she's just a really busy fighter. Santos, kind of unknown. She lost her debut to Barella in a close one, but that loss hasn't really aged well at all with Barella's recent performances, you know, and kind of defensive liability, taking her last opponent down. It slips my mind right now who it was, and getting armbarred. Yeah, didn't show much with that. Santos is 15-1, but like everyone else is saying from what I've seen on reviews, it's kind of a hugely padded record. You go down her topology and her opponents have, you know, 0-1 records, 0-0 records, only a handful of wins, and she's only fought one fighter outside of the UFC with a kind of positive record in her Dana White's Contender Series opponent, who she she won by decision against that lady. So yeah, the padded record doesn't show me much. She obviously has finishing ability, 10 TKOs and 2 subs, so 13 wins via finish out of 15. But, you know, against such lesser competition and opponents, it's hard to read into that too much, or hard to know how much to take from that. Her advantages are going to, in this fight, are going to be her reach in length and reach advantage and height advantage. McCann will have to deal with a pretty big disadvantage there, but you know, her pressure style, come forward, ability to take a shot as well, her durability, and keep coming, take one to give one, will counter that kind of reach discrepancy well. And I think Molly takes a decision. UFC experience and a few really tough fights that she's had in the UFC and managed to push through, showing the kind of mental resilience. I think she'll get her past the inexperienced Santos. I say inexperienced, she's 15-1, which is actually more fights than Molly, but obviously experience in terms of competition and experience in terms of the big stage, the big UFC brand. And yeah, like I mentioned before, Molly's super high volume. It's perfect for a decision, really, in terms of outworking your opponent. I think over 100 significant strikes landed in each of her last 3 fights that have gone to decision. So pretty amazing output for 15-minute fights. Yeah. In saying all of that, like I alluded to in the previous fight, there's no value in the decision here at 1.49 times. So I'll be taking Molly McCann by a knockout at 10.83 times, wagering 150 XP. I think she likely wins the decision, but the 1.49 times multiplier is far too short. And with this knockout choice, I'm going to be playing the first round literally for the sake of it. 2 of her knockout finishes have come in the first. She's not really a finisher by nature, but yeah, I'll be playing that, and I'll be playing a little bit. I can talk myself into it regarding Santos's inexperience, I suppose. Next fight up, a really good one in the bantamweight division. However, these boys will be at featherweight. We've got Jimmy Rivera versus Cody Stamann. Jimmy Rivera is currently 2.49 times on verdict, and Stamann is 1.67 times. Rivera 6-3 UFC, 2-3 last 5. Stamann's 5-1 with 1 draw in the UFC and 3-1 and 1 draw in his last 5 fights. Cutting it pretty straight for you guys. I think we're getting a great price for Rivera here. Both guys really good wrestlers, really evenly matched in that department, but Rivera definitely has the better hands, 100%, whether that be pressuring forward or getting pressured backwards, and he mixes it up more too. You know, Stamann's quite basic with his hands, and he did show it a little bit against Kelleher, but Kelleher is, you know, maybe a 15 to 25 ranked guy at best, and Jimmy Rivera's just not. He's a perennial 5 to 10 guy, and he's only lost to the best. Speaking to Rivera's advantage on the ground, I think if anyone wants this to go to the ground and initiate the wrestling, it's going to be Cody. But with 95% takedown defense from Rivera, I think he's going to struggle. And with Rivera having the big wrestling offensive props as well, you know, I think it's unlikely that Cody gets him to the ground. And if it does, you know, Rivera's wrestling ability, I fancy him to stand back up and get this at boxing range again. And yeah, on the feet, I think he gets boxed up, and getting boxed up, I think he may struggle to get into any offensive rhythm and therefore set up his takedowns. You know, he likes to high guard, come forward, boxing range, swoop in, shoot double legs. Jimmy Rivera's seen that a million times. I think he's going to be able to handle that, no worries. Rivera's only UFC losses are to Piotr Yan, Aljamain Sterling and Marlon Moraes. You know, Marlon did sleep him in the first round, but he has shown durability in all of his other fights like that. That's the only fight he's been knocked out in. And you know, he survived Yan's power through 15 minutes, and Yan knocked him down in rounds and swarmed to finish. And you know, Jimmy Rivera had the wits about him to kind of survive and, you know, look better even in the third round after getting dropped in the first and the second. And as that fight extended, he looked better. You know, he's a durable guy. Marlon just cracked him with a really good shot, and Marlon's done that to other guys high in this division as well. So I don't think that's any knock on him. And yeah, unlike Marlon, I don't think Stamann will have the power to worry Rivera on the feet, or even like those other three guys I mentioned, or other two guys I mentioned in Aljo and Yan. I think those guys are much more of a problem on the feet than Cody Stamann is, and I think Rivera works a decision here. Jimmy is predominantly a points fighter. 16 of his 22 wins have come in that manner. So yeah, Rivera by decision at 3.49 times. I'm going to be wagering 250 XP on that. More for the safety that, you know, the 250 XP outlay is because he's 2.49 times underdog anyway. So I'll be hitting a good multiplier even if he wins via a different decision, or a different manner rather. Okay, so co-main, Tim Elliott, Ryan Benoit. Tim Elliott's 1.36 times on verdict. Ryan Benoit is 3.78 times. Elliott's 4-9 in the UFC and 1-4 in his last 5, and Benoit is 3-4 in the UFC and 2-3 in his last 5. Should be a fun fight. Should be a scrappy fight. Elliott's UFC record is fucking horrible. 4-9 in the UFC, but he has been unfortunate with matchmaking in his career. You know, getting Benavidez, DJ, lots of other guys, lots of other killers at flyweight, 125 down there. Ben Wen, when he was looking good. I know that looks obviously horrible now. Ben Wen's been scrubbed from the UFC for quite some time. But, you know, if you look down his resume there, you know, you can cut him some slack with a few of those losses, I think. And, you know, his motivation for this fight should really be at his peak, because, you know, another loss on this losing streak will potentially lead him to the exit doors of the UFC. Regarding skills, Tim's definitely the busier fighter, and although he might not get heaps of strikes off, he moves plenty, always moving, very kind of jittery, and he always threatens with a takedown. You know, he's shooting frequently, 4.31 attempts per 15 minutes, which is really high pace. If you look through any kind of stats, that's much higher than the standard, than the average, even average for other wrestlers. On the feet, Benoit will carry the power advantage, but Elliott has shown durability to strikes. He's been finished plenty of times in his career, I think 6 in total, but only once by knockout, and that was many, many years ago now. And, you know, Tim Elliott's been in there with some big punches and not been put out. It's more the submissions that I'm worried about, okay? And that liability with the jiu-jitsu defense is not really a factor here. Benoit loves it on the feet. I think 1 win on his record by submission. And yeah, I just don't think that's going to be a problem. So, barring Benoit sleeping Tim, I can only see a scrappy decision victory for Tim Elliott. I like that he's been active. Yes, he's been losing, but this will be his 3rd fight this year. Whereas Benoit, long layoff, and then he fought last year, and this will only be his 2nd fight in 3 years. So, yeah, probably a pretty ugly fight. Probably a classic Tim Elliott type fight. Lots of dancing around, strange angles on punches and kicks. And hopefully the takedowns, where he's going to be safest and be able to get off a bit of kind of minimal damage, but busy enough damage, and I think he wins a decision. It's 2.27 times at the moment, quite short, but not as short as those other outcomes earlier in the card that I faded due to them being in the ones, sub 2 multipliers. So yeah, I'll just be wagering a small 150 XP on this due to the kind of odds and Tim Elliott being a favourite. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking with this one. And to the main event, Calvin Kattar versus Dan Ige. Calvin Kattar 1.18 times and Dan Ige 6.7 times. Quite a big underdog. Kattar 5-2 UFC, 3-2 last 5 fights. Ige 6-1 in the UFC and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Absolutely great main event. As everybody knows, Kattar's an amazing boxer. Everyone says best boxer at 45, probably one of the best boxers in the UFC. He's got awesome footwork, defensively, offensively. He's super long, 5'11" for 45. He's pretty much as big as it gets, and he does extend on his straight punches, and that kind of gets his opponents off guard. They don't read that so well, and you see it oftenly when he throws that left, right, straight down the pipe. He snaps heads back. His range really kind of off-puts people he fights. And people don't give credit for his kicking game too. They talk all about his boxing, but he works legs. He works the legs with his kicks. He kicks to the body, kicks to the head. He might not be as polished as others, but he gets it up there quick. Slight telegraphs with that right from our orthodox. But, I think he's fine. And he's throwing knees up the middle. He shows plenty of looks. Obviously loves the hands. And then, he's grappling, seen less of it in the UFC, but he has ability, and his defensive numbers would suggest that. 77% takedown defense. He has been kind of blessed with fighting predominantly strikers as well. But yeah, we'll see how that gets tested in this fight, because Ige does have wrestling ability. As for Ige, he's had a steady rise in the UFC, gradual increase in competition, or in strength of competition. Trended quite nicely. I tipped Barboza in the last fight, but I actually did score it for Ige. Unpopular opinion, but I had second and third for Ige. And his ability to take those big shots from Edson and remain busy really impressed me. And the version of Edson that we saw at 45 was as good as we see at 55. He didn't look drained, he looked durable, and he looked strong, and he was hitting hard, and Ige took it all. Ige, well-rounded. He hasn't really demonstrated his kind of finishing prowess in the UFC, but he does have 3 KOs and 5 subs on his resume, so it's there. But yeah, you could say he's predominantly a points fighter. Tenacious wrestler, good ability setting shots up off his hands. Left, right, while closing distance, coming forward, slip a punch and straight onto the legs. He's done that. That's kind of his favourite entry. And he's landed a takedown against each of his 7 UFC opponents. Only goes at 34%, but the fact that he's secured one against every opponent is really, really impressive, and it just shows that it's always part of his game plan. He's always implementing it with the hands, with the kicks, and it's always something you got to worry about going up against him. Also, leg kicks. I'd like to talk about that for a moment. Pretty much every fighter that Calvin Kattar has fought has targeted his legs. And we're talking big numbers here, 30 odd leg kicks each by Moicano, Zabit and Stevens, and I feel Ige should do the same. Ige hasn't really shown to fall in love with the leg kicks, but just those numbers there, and Kattar's power, taking away his foundation, taking away his base, it's just a great strategy, and we've seen how effective they can be in slowing opponents down, especially in a 25-minute fight, where if you can take the gas tank, take the power away from your opponent, and the fight wears on, they'll pay dividends. Kattar does counter straight down the pipe off leg kicks, and with those really long punches snaps the heads back, but as I mentioned before, he does overextend with those punches, and that will leave his hips exposed. So Ige, I think, can make a really good read off that. He can throw a leg kick, touch him with the leg kick, wait for Calvin to counter, really overextend on that jab and slip, and then the hips are going to be right there, and that's going to be a great entry for Ige to secure takedowns and avoid the power shots and those counters, because Kattar hasn't really checked leg kicks, he more counters with their hands, and that's kind of a classic boxer response, to be honest. In terms of cardio, I don't think that either of these fighters will tire. The output has never slowed across any of their 3-round fights to date, and they're both also really durable. Only one loss via finish across 41 fights between them, which was when Calvin got subbed in the mid-2000s, way back. So yeah, tough fight to call. In terms of different facets of skill in MMA, I feel like Kattar's advantage in boxing is by far the biggest gap of ability between these two in this fight. But I love taking a fighter that I know can rely on his wrestling ability. And with Ige being such a large underdog here, that really minimises the risk in playing him. So I'm going to take Ige. I'm going to take him via a gritty decision at 11.78 times, and I'm going to wager my biggest bet of the night, 300 XP. I think he will be hurt at certain points in this fight. Kattar's just got that style, he's going to touch you and you're probably going to be hurt, but the Edson fight showed me so much. I think he'll stay composed and then potentially remain busier on the feet than Kattar, including leg kicks. I think that would be a big factor in staying busier. But then as well, utilise his wrestling to grind Kattar out, survive, and use the wrestling to survive any points where he's hurt. Standing and get this decision win. Quickly wrapping up with the multi per annum now, just to recap, we've only hit one, but we're still sitting in the green, plus 34.099 units, because as I say every week, multi per annum we try and hit at about 40 to $1 odds. So if we're putting 1 unit on each bet on each event, it should pay for the whole year's worth of events, in terms of there being 40 odd events, UFC events a year. So we only have to hit one, and we have already this year, so we look to go green or further into the green every week. So basic one this week, 4 legs. First leg, we've got Molly McCann to win, Jimmy Rivera to win, and Tim Elliott to win. All 3 of those are my picks on verdict. And then I'm going Dan Ige by points, by far the biggest leg of this multi. I'm relatively confident with the other 3. This is my big call. I think it's $6.50 for the leg at the moment. But in total, paying $41.64, and we're every chance. I think Ige has a very big shot here of cashing as a dog, and those other 3 fighters are all slight favourites, and I feel like they should be slightly larger favourites. Perhaps not Tim Elliott, perhaps that's a good call, but Jimmy Rivera and Molly I think should be bigger favourites for sure. Okay, and then a prelim play. My value of the undercard, we're sitting plus 1.3 units, still in the green on that, even after that Dos Santos decision didn't go our way, but I'm not playing a prelim this week. I'm strapped for time, lucky to get this video out at all. And if you've stayed this long, sometime between now and the weekend I'll be trying to get out my verdict predictions for Figueroa versus Benavidez. Seems like a pretty cool main card. That co-main, Hermanson versus Gastelum, I'm super pumped for. Should be an absolute banger. And thanks for sticking by, thanks for listening as always, and catch ya.